thanks for the overview, Robert and Ciarán. Plenty of insight there into the new scheme. I suppose one of the questions that's coming up is, I suppose it's the timeline of when the next, I suppose, sub-elements are going to be phased in. I know the animal welfare is in the next day or two. Do you want to give an estimate of the other ones?
The next scheme after that would be the pig and poultry scheme, hopefully in the next week or so. But after that, yeah, I suppose we're working as hard as we can on the remainder of the schemes, as I said, to have them all open by the end of May. I suppose it is dependent on getting all the elements sorted out and having the systems correctly working, so that all investments can be fully applied for. Unfortunately, we can't give exact timelines.
Yeah, and they'll be all open in sufficient time for the closing of mid-June anyway. People will have sufficient window there. Thanks. I guess the next part of that then is the terms and conditions for the animal welfare. So the solar terms and conditions are up on the website already. The animal welfare terms and conditions to have a line of sight.
They will become available as the schemes are launched. It's the intention. All each of the schemes, the terms and conditions will be put up as soon as the scheme is launched. But what I should remember is that there's a full list of all the investments by scheme already on the website. So if you're interested to see what's actually in the scheme and what the main investments and sub-investments, they're there. It's a full spreadsheet divided up by scheme for what's in each scheme. So you can prepare what you're wanting to apply for while waiting for the scheme to open.
Okay, thanks, Robert. And Ciarán, there's been a lot of activity on the website already, or the ag food already, regarding solar, which is good to see. I see quite a number of questions around the solar, the various elements of it. I suppose, who does the solar, the energy survey, the necessity or not of planning permission, inclusion of dwelling house. So maybe Robert Dermot, if you want to walk through a little bit more detail of the solar application in particular as to what can happen. And again, I suppose people querying what's the difference between spillover and export. Now again, I suppose I'd break it down. I suppose it's that the peaks and troughs is the spillover, and it's effectively it is sold back into the grid but at wholesale price, whereas there's a clean export guarantee scheme, which is basically the whole wholesale price. And then there's a clean export premium scheme, which is where the PSO levy comes into it. So anything that's funded under TAMS doesn't qualify for that clean export premium, which is PSO supported. That's the key difference that we're trying to follow on that. Maybe Robert, you want to elaborate a little bit further?
I suppose the difference there on that is, I suppose, also is the systems must be designed for on-farm demand. So you're looking to supply the farm usage. As export would be implying you'd be designing it for a larger than the farm demand. So spillover is just the excess produced at a particular time of day, rather than actually being designed for providing electricity to the grid generally. So that is I suppose one of the key differences on that. I'm trying to remember what the earlier bits there of the questions, John.
Yeah, who does the energy survey?
The energy survey can be done by a solar installer. Anyone on our solar installer list can complete the energy survey. So I suppose as part of the whole planning for the actual solar, for sizing the solar systems to suit the individual farmer's needs.
Okay, so, and then in terms of planning permission,
just one issue on. Go on, Dermot, Robert. Sorry.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead, Dermot, on your bit?
In almost all cases, there won't be planning permission required, but the applicant at the claim stage will have to submit a document stating that there is exemption from planning required. But in the terms and conditions, there are a couple of issues where there may be planning permission required, in particular where they're near hospitals or airports. But that's the details of that are in the terms and conditions. It's section 4.2, page 10 on the solar terms and conditions, gives more details on that. But everybody will have to put up a declaration when they're making their payment claim, just to say that they don't need planning permission. It's just we have to have it in the system for payment. But
And the approval stage as well.
approval stage,
Yeah, I suppose it's just they're also for large ground mounted units. If you're not going on a rooftop, you don't need planning permission because it's more than 50 square meters. So we need to be checking planning, unfortunately, for everybody because of those limitations.
Thanks, Robert. And then on the inclusion of a dwelling house, it's just one dwelling house. A farmstead can be added, isn't it?
Yes, just one dwelling house on the holding, and that house must be on the holding as well.
Yeah, and if a farmer is investing in more than is needed between the farm and the dwelling, it's a separate system.
Yes, must be a separate system with separate controller and separate PV. There's the generation recording system. So it's a full separate system.
Okay, thanks, Robert. There's a couple of questions there also coming in regarding, I guess, young farmers and women farmers, and I suppose who needs green certs and the differences there between those. So again, did you want to elaborate that a little bit?
I suppose a woman farmer who is actually part of the farming business in 2022 or before does not need any green cert. So if they have only taken over the business in 2023 or later, or joined the business, then they need to have a green cert to be actually in place, to be actually paid. So that is to be working, I suppose, similar to the young farmer there. So it's the young farmers always need a green cert once they're actually applying. But a woman farmer, if they've been head of the enterprise in 2022 and before, then there is no requirement for a green cert. But if it's only taken over in 23 or in future years, then they will need the green cert. And that 2022 remains as 2022 for the duration of the scheme. So if someone applying in 24 or 25, it still be looked back to 2022 as to whether or not they were fully involved in part of the actual management and operation of the business. And I suppose, like with the young farmer scheme, there will be a questionnaire for women farmers to verify that they are actually operating as part of the farm business.
Okay, thanks, Robert. And again, the rationale for women farmers to be capped at 66.
I suppose it's there to, I suppose it's keeping people in the working age profile. Other women, they can, if you're over 66, they can apply under the animal welfare scheme as other farmers. I suppose to support the active farmers, to want to see also the generation or renewal then as well.
Yeah, and I suppose another related question that's coming up there a couple of times is, for someone that qualified as a young farmer, obviously a female young farmer, could they, in TAMS 2, could they transition to be qualifying for the women farmers going forward?
Yes.
Perfect. Again, some simple ones there. The minimum area that you need to have as a farm enterprise to qualify for the scheme.
It's 5 hectares for most, and that's for under the animal welfare scheme, and the general schemes. Under the tillage scheme, it's 15 hectares of tillage, and in the organics, it's 5 hectares, and then 1 hectare for horticultural organics.
Okay.
So 5 hectares must be really, I suppose for most, it'll be 5 hectares must be applied for under the basic payment. I suppose for equine people who mightn't have any allowances, it's actually have submitted an application for it. You don't actually have to have received any payment or have any entitlements, but it's the application that is important. Okay,
so that's a key point. The key message there is they need to have a valid, up-to-date BIS application form, irrespective of claiming any entitlements.
Yeah, and irrespective of whether they're eligible for any entitlements or not. Yes.
Okay. Then another one, I suppose people are drawing links between the various Pillar 1 schemes and the Pillar 2 scheme, which is TAMS. So, for example, does a farmer have to qualify for a young farmer in BIS to qualify as a young farmer in TAMS?
No, it's meeting our, they're separate that way. So it's, you're meeting the requirement under TAMS is separate.
Okay, and then a similar one on organics. Does a farmer have to be paid under the organic farming scheme before they can qualify for TAMS organic capital investment scheme?
They must be a member of the, must have been accepted for it. So if they've been accepted and haven't yet received the first payment, that's okay, but they must have be a member of the organic scheme, because by the time they get round to the payment first, make their claim, they will have been paid. To apply, they must be a member of the organic scheme.
Okay. Then there's a couple of questions coming up then on, you mentioned about the additional slurry storage capacity for farms, dairy farms.
Yeah.
So again, just to sort of walk through how they can meet that additional slurry storage. Can they rent in the slurry storage? I guess is the key question that's coming in.
No, you cannot rent. It must be on the holding. The requirement will be that the slurry storage must be provided on the holding, and where the actual grant is actually being provided. So no, the renting in isn't an option, but we will grant aid that additional storage upfront. That it is eligible for grant aid. So if you're currently leasing it in, it's okay to put in an application for the additional slurry storage on the holding, and then apply for the milking machine. And it only applies to the milking machine as well, milking machine investments.
So a stepwise application, okay. Yeah. Then some, I suppose, details coming up on one or two of the investment items. I suppose some people are looking for clarification for the difference between GPS ready, which seems to be the only item on the investment list, as opposed to previously there was full GPS control equipment.
That was causing a lot of problems before. There was the full, you have the GPS ready machine and you have the GPS controller that we applied for separately. A lot of farmers already have the GPS controller, and some people were incorrectly applying for the full GPS machine, not realizing they needed to buy an additional GPS unit, which they weren't wanting to do, and ending up with penalties. So this way, you apply for the GPS ready machine and the GPS controller, and you have the full elements, and both elements there, and both should be shown on their receipt and be paid for both elements. But if a farmer has a suitable GPS unit already, they can just apply for the GPS only machine, just the GPS ready machine on its own. So it's to give that flexibility and to try and reduce the number of penalties we're seeing in that area. So hopefully it looks a little more like we've gone removed. We haven't. They're still there with the fertilizer spreaders. If you look at the investment list, the control unit is there with the fertilizer spreaders and with the sprayers. So they just applied for separately.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Another question coming up is the eligibility for the new potato equipment that's on the list. Again, what sort of potato farmer do you need to be? Could you be just a weigher potato producer, or do you have to? Again,
so you can currently be just a weigher potato producer and looking to convert to seed or produce seed as well. Yeah, we don't specify that as a condition.
Okay, Dermot, maybe this is your side on AgriSnap. I suppose people are looking for clarification of where precisely the AgriSnap is needed. Is it just for fixed equipment, or is it for the mobile?
No, it's fixed and mobile, and every investment item and sub-investment has to be verified by an AgriSnap. I mean, in terms of the solar, it'll be, if possible, a photograph of the shed with some sight of the panels, but obviously the control units and the switches and so on, the inverters, whatever the equipment it's attached to, there'll be some verification involved with those as well, if it's not possible to take a photograph of the entire dimensions of the panels. It's literally a geotagged photo to confirm that the investment is there. So if you can't get a decent shot of the roof, then the control panels and inverters and whatever, that'll probably be enough. It'll give it the geotag reference. That's what we're looking for.
Okay, so it's as much.
Every single investment in all schemes, mobile or fixed, will require at least one photograph to verify its existence. That's an EU regulation. It's come in for all the schemes under the new cap.
Okay, thanks, Dermot. Again, I suppose on one of the investment items, Robert, you drew attention to the bale slice with the plastic remover. So I suppose there's a question asking a shear grab that has a plastic retention kit on it. Is that considered in that mix, or?
Yes, yeah, that would be similar. So it's yes.
Okay. Dermot, maybe on the, I suppose, just to elaborate, the grassland stocking thresholds that I suppose infer eligibility for low emission spreading equipment. Like, so that's phasing in over the next number of years, isn't it? The reduced stocking rate.
Gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah, so ultimately, I guess the key message here is farmers have 1 year following the introduction of the new legislative threshold, and that's phasing in then to 150, I think, this year. And then it's phasing down to 130 and 100 in terms of eligibility, and farmers have 1 year following that, the introduction
our eligibility will be 1 year behind the regulation in effect. So we'll be using the previous year's NMP level data to verify whether or not people qualify.
Okay.
So in other words, we're phasing it in a year after the actual regulation is in force.
Okay. I'm watching the time here, and we're coming towards an hour. So again, like, there's an awful lot of questions have come in. So again, we'll make an effort to get back on the specifics of those if there's anything missed. Was there anything else jumped out there, maybe Ciarán or Dermot, as you were looking down through the thing that I haven't picked up? I've seen a couple of questions there on registered farm partnerships. And again, an example of where there's 2 women and 1 male in a registered farm partnership. Will the full double threshold qualify for the 60% there? So the 160 ceiling?
No, if there's only 1 woman in the partnership, it's only 60% up to the 90,000 and 40% over that. And the woman there will be a verification the woman is actually involved as actively involved in the farming enterprise and is receiving payments from profits from the business as well. So the same way as a young farmer would be.
If there's 2 women farmers in the registered farm partnership, 2 women and 1 man.
That would be the 60% on the full, if they're 2 qualifying women.
Okay, and then sort of a similar variant of that is registered farm partnership. There's a young farmer was in it and they qualified for the 60% the last time round, and now there's a new young farmer joining the same partnership. Do they continue to qualify for young farmer?
If a young the second young farmer is qualifying young farmer, so yes, they would be eligible. Again, that second young farmer must have ownership of the business as well. So it's as long as they're fully involved, yes.
Okay, then there was a question there again on a specific item. Are water heaters in the dairy eligible? And again, there was a reference made to the 120 dairy cow limit.
Yes, they are eligible, and any dairy farmer can apply for them. The 120 cow limit does not apply to the water heaters, and they're both on-demand and traditional water heaters are both eligible, along with heat recovery systems.
So I guess the key point is the 120 cow limit doesn't apply to any investment other than the milking machine.
That is correct. Yes, that's correct.
Just one clarification as well, John, on the 10% extra slurry requirement. Leased sheds are allowed, I believe, under the scheme.
No, it must be on the holding.
It has to be on the holding.
On the holding, we say.
Okay.
Okay, and then a clarification there. I'll leave it with this last one. Again, it's a clarification that the double ceiling for a registered farm partnership is 160. It's not 180.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not.
Yeah, the partnership ceiling did not increase.
Yeah, it's not a full doubling. Okay. Well, maybe we're just at the 2 o'clock. Did anyone want to say anything else in closing?
suppose the big thing is get preparing, look at the documents that are available in the investment lists and prepare your planning if you're wanting to make an application, even though the schemes aren't open. Make sure you get all your planning drawings done if you're looking to apply for when the schemes do open. So things are very similar to TAMS 2. So if you're prepared in the same way as for TAMS 2, you'd be ready for when the relevant scheme opens.
Okay, and yeah, and we're making progress on all those, and the terms and conditions will be available as each sub-element of the scheme opens over the next number of weeks in terms of phasing it. So I guess that's the real important point, that to look at the department's website there at the moment, the full list of investment items is there, so you can really be having to think about what items you might like to invest in at the moment and be preparing all the documentation then around those in anticipation of the system, the application system opening then over the next number of weeks. And the first tranche will be closing mid-June, and then every 12 weeks or so after that, there'll be a new tranche closing. I suppose, yeah, and then rollover. There's only rollover between tranches of one application rollover. Isn't that it, Dermot?
That's right,
yeah, that's correct.
Okay, right, I'll leave you with that then this morning. So I hope you found that webinar useful, and we will try to do further webinars as the various other sub-schemes open, just to cover the detail, because again, we picked up today that there was a lot of questions there specifically on the solar side of it. So again, as we go through the next more specialty schemes, we'll try and follow through on a similar information webinar. Okay, thank you, and thanks to the speakers this morning.